After a retreat, it's often the tradition to talk a little bit about our retreat, any experiences or insights that we've had. And I can't claim any insights, but I can tell you my experience. I think it was a first for many of us to meditate on the Amitabha Buddha practice, which includes aspirational prayers and dedications for being reborn in a Pure Land. I've not been introduced to that practice in such detail before. And I had some reservations at first because when we studied the Lamrim Chimmo, when I lived in Australia, I remember Geshe Tashi Tsering cautioning us about Pure Land practices. He said, aspirational prayers can help us to overcome the obstacles to bridging the gap between karmic causes that we have accumulated and the effects of those causes, but that it would be very difficult to establish karmic effects solely upon aspirational prayers. He said, you will find the statement that you can take rebirth in Sukhavati, the blissful Pure Land, through aspirational prayers, so be aware, he said. It's very difficult to establish effects solely through aspirational prayers and not relying on causes. In other words, is it really that easy to be reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land? So it planted a doubt in my mind that I've carried. And also when we studied death, intermediate state, rebirth, and the three kayas, there's a statement in the text that says, the womb-born body of a human in Jambudvipa, or the southern continent, which has 6 constituents, is a very special support for the practice of highest yoga tantra. It said that even bodhisattvas who abide in Amitabha's Pure Land make prayers to be reborn as a human in Jambudvipa in order to get these 6 constituents to quickly practice tantra and achieve Buddhahood. More doubt. And I've been taught that highest yoga tantra practice is necessary for achieving enlightenment, although now that we're studying Dzogchen, maybe there's more doubt. I remember when I asked directly once about Pure Land practice, I remember Geshe-la saying something like, do your best to progress along the path as well as you can in this life, and you can hedge your bets by doing these practices of the Pure Land. So again, I was very conditioned in a certain way. But I do have some faith in the Buddha Dharma, in karma, in bodhicitta, emptiness, tantra. But speaking for myself, I don't feel too confident that I'm going to be achieving enlightenment in this lifetime. And so this description of being able to practice continuously in the next life without any suffering is very appealing. Not only does it include a miraculous pain-free birth on a lotus, the environment there in the Pure Land is very pleasant. The water and the waterfalls, the trees, the birds, all make pleasant sounds that teach the Dharma. And one can receive teachings directly with Amitabha Buddha or travel to other Pure Lands to receive teachings. And they say it's guaranteed that you will achieve enlightenment once you're born there. It may take a while, but it's guaranteed. Or that's how it sounds. That's how it comes across. So I found it, important to continue thinking about this and to sincerely entertain the idea. But at one point in the retreat, I found myself thinking, do I really want to be reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land? I started making these aspirations wholeheartedly, and this doubt arose in my mind. Perhaps this was just some nostalgia for samsara, I'm not sure. Maybe I assumed that if I was born there, I would never be reborn as a human, and a human being is all I remember at this stage. So it was also at odds with many of the aspirational prayers I've already made in this life for a precious human rebirth, to be reborn under the care in a good family, under the care and guidance of perfectly qualified Mahayana and Vajrayana spiritual teachers, and progress quickly along the path, etc., etc. So it kind of went against a lot of conditioning in that direction as well. On the other hand, the Buddha himself spoke about Amitabha's Pure Land in the Sutras of Amitabha, found in the Chinese canon, and these have been widely read and practiced in the Chinese tradition for centuries. They're considered part of the sutra path. In Tibet, this practice is included in the Tantra vehicle. And so there are many, many sutras that talk about these Pure Lands, various Pure Lands, not just Amitabha's. For example, the King of Prayers is from the Avatamsaka Sutra, and it says, there's a verse there that says, should anyone recite this aspiration of sublime ways, they will pass beyond all states of sorrow, will rise above all inferior beings, and gain a vision of Amitabha, Buddha of infinite light. it seems to link the practice of developing the two bodhicittas with the ability to see Amitabha. Also, there's a verse in the Lama Chupa practice that includes, oh yeah, it's here. There's a verse in the Lama Chupa practice that includes a verse in the Lam Rim prayer about the Pure Lands. And so it's after all the verses on the six perfections and all the verses on emptiness, both in meditation, post-meditation, and then Tantra. Then it says, if my time of death comes before I've completed the points of the path, I seek your blessings that I may be led to a Pure Land through the instructions of correctly applying the five forces or the Guru's transference of mind, the forceful means to enlightenment. So it seems to indicate that if we haven't quite created the causes for enlightenment, that we can just make aspirational prayers at the time of death and poof, we get a good result. So I remember again Geshe Tashi Tsering saying, the best way to apply these five forces is not at the time of death, it's throughout our lives, so that we're creating causes. That's what's going to be the best insurance, Dharma insurance we have. The other deciding factor for engaging wholeheartedly in this practice came from meditating on the sufferings, the 8 sufferings of cyclic existence. Venerable suggested that I meditate on this years ago before I ordained, and it's something that I have tried to continue doing throughout my Dharma life because it's so powerful. And it seemed to shake something in me this time, meditating particularly on the suffering of birth. We have this romantic or idealized notion of giving birth. Babies are cute. But if you really think about it seriously, deeply, birth is not so pleasant for anyone involved. So just to go through some of these points that help to turn my mind. Birth is suffering because it's associated with pain. Not only is the mother in labor for 12 or 24 or 36 hours, the baby is too. Perhaps the water broke early on and that baby is there in a suffering environment for that period of time, and then squeezed between a narrow open way to get out and being, what about that is pleasant? And then coming in, if you look at videos or pictures of babies when they're first born, it's like they're startled. They come into bright lights and harsh sounds, and even the softest blanket is going to feel harsh to a body that's been floating around in fluids for 9 months. So what is pleasant about birth? Birth is suffering because it's associated with dysfunctional tendencies. In a nutshell, what that means is that we come into this life with many karmic seeds and latencies or imprints for the afflictions. And that makes it very difficult for our body and mind to really engage in Dharma practice. That's what it means. So that comes with birth. That's part of birth. That's not because we're poor practitioners. It's not because we're, somehow defective. It's because we're contaminated. We have a contaminated birth from the very get-go. Birth is suffering because it is the origin of suffering. As soon as we have birth, on that basis we have aging in the very next moment. That leads to sickness and death. Boy, that's a whole package. It comes together. There's no way to avoid that. So, although we might idealize birth, we have to look at the whole spectrum of what birth includes. It includes all those things. Also, birth is suffering because it's the origin of the afflictions. As soon as we're born and we come in contact with pleasant objects, it tends to lead to attachment. We have so much conditioning already going in that direction from previous lives. We come in contact with things that are unpleasant, immediately there's aversion, there's wanting to get away from it. And so how easily this birth is the very origin of all of our suffering. And birth is suffering because it comes with unwanted separation. As soon as we're born, there's really no other cause for death. And there might be a condition that speeds up our death, but death is part of that package. And so for the first time, I was able to really conclude for myself that I don't actually want another human rebirth. You might think, haven't you done that a long time ago? I haven't. This is the first time I really felt that in my bones. I do not want another human rebirth. And so that really supported my aspiration to want to be reborn in a Pure Land where I can commit myself 100% to just practicing the Dharma without distraction. So we'll see how long it lasts. I intend to continue with the Amitabha practice. I also have every intention to continue practicing the path as hard as I can. I'll do them both. Hedge my bets. But I was so glad that we had the opportunity to do this practice. And it's really opened my eyes to other possibilities.